few years ago, I was on a missions trip in LA, and while we were there, we were doing outreach in the suburbs, praying for people and sharing Jesus with them. At one point, I saw a woman on the corner of the street with her bike, and I felt God leading me to talk to her. As I approached her with a friend of mine and told her we were out praying for people, and asked her if she needed prayer. She looked very confused, but my friend asked if she had pain in her stomach, and she did. We prayed for healing, and as we prayed, I felt God give me an encouraging word to share with her. I told her that I felt God wanted to say that he was so proud of her and that he wanted me to tell her that she is such a good mother. She then started to cry and told us that her husband was in a gang, and to protect her kids, she sent them to another state to people to take care of them so that they could be safe. She told them that they could come back at any time. She just wanted them to be safe. The people who were taking care of her children were trying to take custody over them, and in 3 days' time there was a court hearing over this matter. She was not sure if she had done the right thing sending her kids away, and this was an encouragement from God to her. She was a Christian herself. The gift of prophecy is so powerful because it is such an effective way to communicate God's love to people. The purpose of prophecy is for people to hear what God is saying and to encounter him in the process. There are different kinds of prophetic words we read in the Bible. Some are directive, some are rebukes, and some are warnings, and others are used to encourage and build people up. The sort of prophecy we are looking at today is the latter, the encouraging type Paul talks about using in a corporate or church setting in the letter of 1 Corinthians. The key passage we will look at for this point of prophecy comes from 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 1 to 5. What's interesting is that in chapter 12 and chapter 14, we read about spiritual gifts, and right in the middle is chapter 13, which is all about love. This gives us a hint to the framework in which God wants us to see and use our spiritual gifts through the lens of love. The supernatural power of God is amazing, but it's worthless without us having love. Our goal when we give someone a prophetic word in this context is that they experience God's love. Let's read from verse 1 of chapter 14. Follow the way of love and eagerly desire gifts of the Spirit, especially prophecy. For anyone who speaks in a tongue does not speak to people but to God. Indeed, no one understands them. They utter mysteries by the Spirit. But the one who prophesies speaks to people for their strengthening, encouraging, and comfort. Anyone who speaks in a tongue edifies themselves, but the one who prophesies edifies the church. I would like every one of you to speak in tongues, but I would rather have you prophesy. The one who prophesies is greater than the one who speaks in tongues, unless someone interprets, so that the church may be edified. God wants us to desire to prophesy. It's a gift for us to use in blessing the people around us. The result is that the entire church is encouraged. Remember that this sort of prophetic word gives the people an escape, like the escape ESC button on your keyboard. It is for ESC, encouraging, strengthening, and comfort. Essentially, prophecy is hearing God's voice and communicating it to someone else. God's voice can be like a radio signal. Right now, there are radio signals traveling around, but we don't hear them unless we tune our radio to the right channel. God may be wanting to speak to you right now, but sometimes we haven't tuned in. Some of the ways we can hear God's voice include an impression, such as a feeling about someone or something, a picture, for example, a light or a place, or a thought, such as a recurring thought that doesn't go away. If you remember the story in the beginning, I kept hearing in my thoughts, mother, over and over and over again, for example. Those are just a few of the ways God speaks. Once we've heard something, we then ask God what it means. Ask him to tell you more about what you're hearing or seeing, why it looks or how it looks, or what the implications may be. When I heard mother over and over and over again, I asked God what it meant, and I had a feeling in my spirit that God was saying that she is a good mother. As I started to speak, I started to have more thoughts and impressions in my spirit about what God is saying. And sometimes you just have to start speaking and God will give you more. After sharing the word with someone, ask them if it resonated with them. It's important to learn how to hear God's voice better, and we do that through feedback, asking whether it spoke to them or what it meant to them. It's important to remember that none of us hear God perfectly. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 9 says, "For we know in part, and we prophesy in part." But what does that mean? A good example I've heard is like a mobile phone. As I hold my iPhone, what do you see? You see the front, you see the screen, and you see the bezels. But you don't see what the back looks like. From my perspective, I see the back, but I can't see the screen. And when we prophesy, God gives us part of the picture, but not the whole thing. Together in community, we hear God's voice together. When you get a prophetic word, make sure that you take it to your leader and take it to God in prayer. Prophecy is a gift that we do in community. You too can hear God's voice and encourage and strengthen and comfort those around you. And I challenge you to apply these steps in your life. Number one, ask God for a word, whether that's a picture, an impression, or something else. Number two, ask God what it means. Number three, communicate what you are hearing from God with a spirit of love. Always bring a friend or someone else as accountability so they can hear too. Number four, ask for feedback. To practice this gift, ask friends, family, and leaders if you can take a moment and practice prophesying over them. I did this so much when I first started prophesying, and it's the quickest way to learn. Just say something like, "I'm practicing hearing God's voice and wanted to ask you if I can give you a prophetic word and give you some feedback, and you can give me some feedback." Most people will say yes and will be more than happy. They will be blessed with your act of love, and you will learn to hear God's voice better, so it's a win-win. In summary, prophecy in 1 Corinthians is communicating God's heart of love for people. Remember to always keep love at the center of it.